Serious, Redditors who have died temporarily nearly died. Did your life flash before your eyes? If not, what did happen? From my grandfather. He has heart issues and had an internal defibrillator fitted to help his heart beat normally. To test it, they stopped his heart while he was awake, but he kept talking to the doctors about the weather and normal old man stuff. When his heart restarted, he felt a little shock and asked what was that. I was enjoying myself. The doctor replied, welcome back to life. The doctor told him afterwards that he should have just stopped being awake and fallen unconscious, and thus was the only time anything like this had ever happened to one of his patients. Stubborn old man. My uncle died and got resuscitated, and when he came back to life, he was annoyed with the doctors because death was so beautiful and peaceful. My heart stopped when I was in the air for 34 seconds. Not really a life flash, but a very calming feeling of, as I describe it, what was I even worried about? Everything is going to be fine. When I had my car accident, I had the exact same feeling. It was like I pierced the veil of reality for a second and my perspective was really clear that no matter what, everything was so okay, and I hope death is as peaceful as that, honestly. I had a near-death experience when I was about 5. I was drowning in a pool. I probably didn't have enough memories at that point for anything to flash before my eyes, and I was also very focused on trying to get my head above the water again. I remember looking up at the sky through the water, that the surface started to look geometric like tessellations. Then I experienced some sort of depersonalization. I had a distinct feeling that I was outside of my body, and I watched what happened next, my mom saving me from a distance. I suffocated during surgery due to a series of errors with the nitrous mask and monitors that had been removed and not immediately put back. As I was suffocating, I tried to signal, realized I was under so much nitrous I couldn't move. My ears were ringing. I thought about my husband, and if my daughter would be okay. Cursed the anesthesiologist because one of the nurses said I didn't look good and he said no one could move until he finished this part. I remember blacking out, then watching from a corner of the OR while everyone was rushing to work on a pink blob. I could see everyone clearly, but one thing was a blob. Realized the blob was me, and they were trying to resuscitate. I intentionally did not go anywhere because I wanted to be there when I was resuscitated so I could be alive again. I just existed in that corner watching the chaos. Then I woke up on the table, bruised but alive. Man, I really hope all you people are telling the truth. What an experience. Maybe a little late to the thread, but my dad flatlined with a failing heart. When they brought him back, the doctor asked where he had been. My dad said he was picking blueberries with his long deceased mother and his sister. 1,000 miles away, that sister woke up in the middle of the night, woke her husband and said something was wrong with her brother. She had been dreaming that she was picking blueberries with my dad and their mom. I get teary-eyed every time I tell that story. He died a few months later. Miss ya, Dad. I remember slipping into a relaxed, giddy state, a place where it felt okay to not worry about a thing because it didn't really exist or mean anything anyway. It was a detachment while also being aware of people around me tending to me, discussing me amongst themselves, and I just submitted my body to them while my mind enjoyed this totally chill, at peace, dreamlike state. I imagine it was due to blood loss and shock, but it was interesting all the same. I often wonder if it's a state we enter naturally near to death, and if it is, I'm okay with that. There was absolutely nothing. No light, no memories, nothing. It was like it didn't exist for about an hour or so. I didn't experience the passing of time either, so the entire time I was dead seemed like an instant. It was sort of like teleporting into the future. Most HROPODs will feel like you're drifting after a much needed sleep. That's what's so scary about them. I bled to death after a car accident. I went somewhere. I can't say for sure if it was real or just a weird chemical trip in my brain, but the best way I can describe it was like being in a hallway made out of space. It was beautiful and incredibly peaceful. I saw flecks of memories passing by me, but I wasn't focused on them. Then a woman's voice that felt like it was everywhere told me I could wake up and suddenly I was alive again. I'm pretty sure before you die your brain activity suddenly spikes, which is probably why you got all those memories. I nearly drowned in a swimming pool when I was 9 years old, at a hotel. when my family were on a holiday. I remembered it like it was yesterday. At that moment, my legs and arms locked up, my lungs felt like stone, and then I slipped out of consciousness for I'm not sure how long. I woke up to the lifeguard pumping my chest. During the time I was unconscious, I was floating, probably because I was in water, in space filled with stars. I tried to swim over to one of the stars and found out there were fragments of my memories, voices, noises, smell, faces, places, all jumbled together. But a big part of those fragments were my mom, my dad, and my 2 younger brothers and a cousin who was also my best friend. It wasn't like a memory or anything. To put it into words, it was more like a soup of everything I've ever seen, heard, tasted, smell, and feel all there. Then I woke up. I've never seen that vision again, but I still remember it clear as day. I had my heart stopped at the hospital because my heart was going 150 BPM for hours. I even had the readout printed out of me flatlining. I had a heart condition and was on acid. My life did not flash before my eyes. It felt like a black cloud spreading through my body, the heart-stopping injection. Which makes no sense. I should note I have over 4 years drug and alcohol free now. But when it was over, the doctor was walking out of the room, turned to me and said, "Better living through chemistry. Her crazy experience, would not recommend." I am security guard and couple years ago guy attacked me in the parking garage and stabbed me. When I was bleeding and losing consciousness, I didn't really saw memories, it was more like memory with better outcome. Sorry about my bad English, not my first language. I had a near-death overdose experience at a young age. I remember a black presence came to me, and I knew it was my death. I felt very strongly that it was not my time to go, that I had so much more to do. I also had an OD and no life flashing before my eyes or anything. Just felt really tired and the overwhelming urge to sleep. Maybe I wasn't near enough to death to have the memory thing to happen, but it was dang scary enough knowing I might be slipping into my last sleep right now and I couldn't do anything about it. Sorry on mobile etc. My body was completely infected with sepsis. The emergency room staff had placed me in a tub of ice to try and help fight the fever. I had 2 IVs pumping. I don't know what all into me. Next thing I knew, everything was dark. I could feel other people around me. I felt so happy and light. I was free. There was no fear. Somewhere I could hear my best friend yelling at me, "BCH, don't die. I am not raising your children." My mind snapped too. Immediately I knew I had to go back. There was no way I was going to let her near my children. Woke up right afterwards and was amazed at how heavy my limbs felt. I have no fear of dying now. I have raised my kids, and she is no longer my best friend. Lost 2.5 liters of blood in childbirth. Midwives hadn't realized, despite me telling them how unwell I felt and that I was going to be sick. It wasn't until I sort of passed out and remember them saying blood pressure was something over 0. They hit the buzzers. A lot of people came rushing in and I just lying there for what felt like a long time, feeling everything go quiet but wasn't peaceful. Just absolute sadness consumed me that my husband was about to be left without me and that my new son wouldn't have a mummy. A lot of oxygen, drugs and a couple packs of emergency blood transfusion later, and thankfully I was okay. Still very mentally scared by the whole thing. But main moral of the story, please give blood if you can. It's only thanks to the kindness of strangers my baby has a mama, and bleeding out during childbirth is a lot more common than I ever realized. This is the scariest thing for me to think about. How happy that moment would be for the dad, and exciting. Then just watching the love of my life not make it. I would be crushed. I wouldn't know how to handle it. IDK. IDK. I died briefly due to complications of having leukemia, pneumonia, chickenpox, 108.9 fever and encephalitis, spelling, at the same time. It was that nothingness in between falling asleep and waking up. I knew nothing happened. It's hard to explain. Drowned when I was 3 and was gone about 90 seconds. Dying is a painless experience. Well, there is no pain in your mind. Your body is another story. Best way to describe it. You feel everything and nothing at the same time. You feel free and lost. Being young I didn't have as many memories to see, but I do remember seeing myself pulled out the water. It's hard to explain. There's something beyond death, but it's not what you expect. I overdosed when I was 14. I gradually transitioned from life into a state of peace and bliss. I felt something. The presence of something wonderful but heavy. Heavy and old and not meant for us mortal folks. I felt that I was on the very brink of entering this place, of finding something great, but I was always just on the edge. It was so long, and so tiring, and I was just waiting to experience this thing. Next thing I know I'm back to the real world, and I never had the chance to experience the greatness. I floated out of my body and looked down on the room, saw the medical staff trying to revive me and just felt awesome. In a very detached way, I thought, well, my family is gonna be pee. But physically I just felt like I was floating and very, very content. I remember being excited to see what was next. Then I was revived. I no longer feared death. It was a great experience. I just want to know where my people were. I thought they were supposed to come welcome my butt, or something. This comment made me think of Dead Like Me. I have been clinical dead twice. Both times during tests in a hospital. No light, no life flashing before my eyes or out of body experience. Felt just any other time I lost consciousness, with the sole exception that the disorientation and confusion was much bigger after waking up again. Despite only a few minutes having passed, and being in the same place, if they told me I had been out for weeks, months or even years, I would have believed them in those first few minutes. Also I really wanted to go pee and kept trying to get up to go to the bathroom, and had to be stopped several times by the doctors and nurses. I overdosed, I stopped breathing and had no pulse. There is blackness, there's no thought, there's no feelings, there's no past, no future, just drifting in this blackness. There was no bright light, there was no flashing of my life. Do you remember what it was like before you were born? That's what I feel like it was. It was timeless. I had no knowledge that I had died, but I had no knowledge of a meat I have. I do not find death to be scary now. I know that it is a peaceful, timeless place. Or it could have been all the drugs I was on. I'm sober now BTW. The thing that hurt was waking up. When I was maybe 6 or so, my friend and I thought it'd be a good idea to play in her pool without her mom there. I didn't know how to swim and found myself slipping into the deep end. For a while I was panicking and struggling against the water. I held my breath as long as I could and eventually started to breathe in the water, which made me panic more, until eventually I stopped resisting. Eventually this great sense of calm came over me. I remember crapping my pants and not caring. The last thing I remember was looking up and seeing the light dance and refract beautifully against the water with so many colors. Then it just went black. Apparently my friend who could swim got her mom, who did CPR on me long enough for an ambulance to come. My lungs were full enough of water that I was medically drowned. My mom was at the hospital and they were scared that even if I woke up I would have brain damage. But I woke up fine. I told my mom that God has big hands and that I saw Jerry Garcia. I'm not religious at all and wasn't brought up in that sort of background, but I have definitely believed in a higher power since that day. I've kept a picture of Jerry Garcia in my room since high school to watch over me. I feel like the best answer I can give for this is kind of, at age 15. My mother almost murdered me BC. She was super drunk and while I expected her to just routinely beat me, she had been getting drunk and abusing me my entire life. I was in for a rude awakening. I just saw the end. That, maybe that grey-haired guy on America's Most Wanted, didn't know John Walsh's name at the time, was going to talk about the murder of me, this 15-year-old girl by her alcoholic mother, and that I'd have a funeral and so few people would attend. Though, what vividly did flash before my eyes was all of the abuse, and it came down to the cold metal at my throat. I was ready to die. I didn't, but sometimes I wish my mother had done me in. I'm in my 20s now and I've realized both my parents are pieces of crap and narcissists, and I'm probably better off without them, despite the big butt package of PTSD and trauma I now carry with me. Same as a few other comments, it felt like I was falling asleep. I didn't feel much, but I remember it was really dark and I heard echoes of the voices of the people around me. Scary stuff. Not sure if it was a near-death experience, but it did feel like I was dying. I drowned and was brought back with CPR. All I remember from it was that it was a quiet experience and dark. Everything just faded to black. I put brought back in quotes because you don't perform CPR on the truly dead. It can preserve life, but it cannot restore it. I had no pulse, but the CPR was begun before my system completely lost oxygenation. It's at that point you're considered dead. I was alone at home and choked on a fatty piece of steak I was eating outside. At first I could only get little gulps of air in. Then I tried to take a bigger breath and just lodged the steak further down my windpipe, completely blocking it. I considered throwing myself onto the back of a chair to attempt the Heimlich maneuver but was convinced it wouldn't be successful. I was initially worried about passing out and falling out my wheelchair, so I started pushing myself to a nearby sunbed so I could lie down. But then realized since I wasn't breathing it was probably going to be the end. I remember thinking something like, wow, so this is how I die. I didn't expect it to be this soon. I have contemplated suicide quite a lot. Fortunately the steak dislodged itself, possibly from the motion of me pushing the wheelchair, maybe helped by some slimy throat saliva or something. The whole experience lasted about 45-60 seconds, but really freaked me out, and I still don't really know what to make of it several months later. I didn't get close to death but was definitely sure that I was about to die, so it was more of a psychological mindfuck than a physical or near-death experience. I eat a lot of steak, but now take smaller mouthfuls, chew more, and avoid big fatty pieces. My dog is grateful, I'm sure, and my feelings about suicide are a bit different. I think I'm more scared of death than before, even though I remained quite calm during my experience. I think the most scary thing is that it can really happen at any time, even when you're just relaxing at home, enjoying a steak and the view. Very similar thing happened to me with a pork chop when I was 15. I didn't want to eat solid food for months and the idea of death terrified me for years. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Glad you okay and you're feeling different about suicide. I'm happy you're with us. I had a grand mal seizure. From what I was told I stopped breathing, got CPR, came to thinking I was just sleeping, no recollection of it. I came back discombobulated, confused, thrashing around with the EMTs. I got to the hospital and was placed on a crash cart, had multiple EKGs. I honestly thought I was going to die, but to be honest nothing flashed before my eyes. I was in a high impact car accident. Back then I was young and stupid and didn't like wearing my seatbelt. My face hit the window. I was the passenger. Basically the driver was speeding like heck and the idiot was drunk and did an illegal left turn. While the driver hit the brakes aggressively before the impact, I honestly thought I was going to die, and in my mind I told myself, this is it for you. You are so young and have not lived life. Life is not fair. In all honesty, at the time I didn't quite comprehend it. It was a slow fade to black, and the noises that were going on around me somehow didn't penetrate my brain. Yes, I could hear them and yes they were there, but the comprehension didn't happen. Like those few moments when you wake up and you hear someone talking to you but it just sounds like noises. I didn't feel anything. No pain, no struggle, just a soft nothing into dark. I don't really know if mine was a hallucination from the high fever the pneumonia had given me or what. I was 4 and collapsed into a pile of dirty laundry trying to get into the living room where my mom was. I can vividly remember pulling laundry on top of myself trying to get warm so I could make it farther, and seeing a bright, golden light envelope everything. It formed into a tall woman in flowing clothes, and then my next memory is waking up in the hospital a couple of days later. 4 times I almost died. This includes dialysis, comas, emergency surgery. Twice my heart actually stopped. Those times : at age 8 after suffering anaphylactic shock due to a dye injected into my body for a kidney scan. Didn't see crap, only felt sick. Zonked out, then was out cold until my hearing came back as if I was underwater and I saw the paddles on my chest and felt the shock jolt me hard. Age 33 I had a kidney infection. These can be very serious if left untreated, as I was born with severe reflux and had my ureters removed and reimplanted and suffered 48/52 damage to my kidneys. I went into septic shock. My husband found me unconscious. I was in a coma for a week and had dialysis. I had told my husband 2 days before I was ready to go now and was at peace. He thought I was tripping due to medication I was on. I knew I was going to die, but when it happened I felt nothing except when I woke up I had the feeling my mum and auntie besides my husband had been in the room. Can't explain why because I didn't hear them. I was in a motorcycle accident when I was 18. I was going 110 km/h when I was thrown from my bike. My bike was destroyed. After the paramedics realized I was okay they told me I shouldn't have ever lived through that, let alone get up and walk away afterwards. I know the whole thing was over in a matter of seconds but it seemed like there was lots of good memories going through my mind and the feeling I had was so peaceful and calming. I ended up losing consciousness but when I came to I remember being so happy I had another opportunity. I was being drowned by someone. They didn't know what they were doing. They were drunk. No memories flashing before my eyes. Everything went black and silent. I remember it felt like at least 30 minutes had passed. It had only been a couple seconds and I came to I couldn't see anything but white and I asked am I dead? I wasn't dead, but I was only 8 and I couldn't understand what had happened. Something else I vividly recall from the experience is no longer drowning or not being able to breathe after I blacked out. By the time I had come to it felt like I was just normally breathing air, but I was still underneath the water. I sincerely hope your parents cut that individual out of your lives. Not how close to death I actually was but it felt pretty scary. Went to Tanzania a few years ago with a large group of people to do work experience in a hospital. On one of our days off we're taken to this big waterfall. Everyone was paddling around the river plunge pool but I was like heck yes swim time. Was swimming up to the waterfall against the force of the water pushing me back. I was swimming hard against it thinking it was a bit like a water treadmill. Suddenly I got too close and found myself sucked down by the falling water maybe 4 meters under. I was getting rolled head over heels for about 30 seconds before I clocked what was happening. I remember very clearly thinking in my head swim up you're going to drown, so I swam to what I thought was the surface, put my hand above me to feel around and felt the bottom over the pool. I was so disoriented from being thrown around I couldn't work out which way was up and started to panic and thrash around with my arms. I felt a rock wall and kicked against it as hard as I could, which managed to push me out of the water, sucking me down and into water moving downriver. My head found the surface and I came up gasping for air. No one out of the maybe 15 people I was with had noticed I'd disappeared under the water for about 1-2 minutes. Nothing flashed before my eyes but it was weird how cut and dry my thoughts became. They were like a separate person giving me specific instructions to not die in my own head. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.